All right. So, just waiting for Mike. Hey everybody, we are just waiting for Mike to click on, and then we can do the interview. Ah, hi Rose. Hey Destiny. All right, there's Mike. Okay.
Oh, wait, let me.
All right, so our first lesson for everybody is going to be the difference between horizontal and vertical.
What's up?
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good.
How's it going in New York?
It's great. Amazing.
You
I
seem
don't know.
busy.
I'm just in my apartment. You
Hey,
know?
I'm glad you have a lot of books. It's important
Yeah.
to read.
Yeah. You're in my study right now.
Oh, good.
You're in
Very
my.
good.
This is where I do my deep thinking and socially conscious, thought-provoking work. You know.
All
You know how it is.
all your photographer interviews.
Exactly.
Yay. Well,
I'm actually doing. I got CNN coming up.
oh, okay.
So.
I won't take too much of your precious time, don't worry.
How is it in LA? Warm?
Yeah, it's warm. It's raining today. I can't complain. I'm just in my house like everybody else, just trying to pass the time. I finished my taxes, so I'm pretty proud of
I
myself.
have a pile of things
But yeah,
that I need to do. Wait a second. How do I?
uh, yeah.
Um, I had started because I was gonna do it by April 15th, and then once they did the extension, I was like,
Couple
and
more
also it's
months.
like, shouldn't we not have to pay taxes at this point?
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah,
doesn't make any sense. It makes
yeah.
no sense.
I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, we could definitely talk the whole hour about this kind of stuff, but I thought it would be fun to talk about film photography and shooting photos in the era before digital. What do you think?
I think I couldn't think of anything less fun than that. But since I like you,
Oh,
so I'll make an exception.
okay. Well, thank you. Just this time.
Yeah, just once.
All right. Well, I'm kind of excited to learn some stuff about you and about your work. So, um,
Okay.
but I guess we should start with I actually have a list of questions that my boyfriend helped prepare because he's just
Yeah.
starting to get into film photography. So
Right.
I can't always remember what it's like to learn how to take pictures again. You learn so much over so many years. It's like you forget all the
Yeah,
bullshit
it
that you
just
had to
becomes
deal with.
second nature. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you know you wanted to take photos? How old were you? How did
And
you
also,
learn?
when we learned, there was no digital option. It was
No.
just, if you want to be a photographer, this is how you do it. There was
Yeah.
no like, I'm a film photographer. It's just, so what was the question?
Yeah, film was not a novelty back then. It was the only way you
Yeah.
could take a picture, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah. So the question was, when did you know you wanted to take pictures? How old were you? And when did you know?
Well, I always, I like in my family, there was always pictures. Mostly my mom always had a camera, you know, just always, you know, we have like tons of family photos and stuff like that. And my dad was actually a pretty good photographer too. But you know, it's funny because when I was a kid, I was always like, I always had a little camera, but I was more into drawing and painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always draw pictures from like Rolling Stone and, you know, stuff like that of, you know, but I never thought, like, it never occurred to me that there was a photographer behind the pictures. That makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
like my view of a photographer was, you know, like, the people that came to school to do our school picture,
Right.
or like a wedding photographer. Like, I didn't think like, I just knew, oh, that's a picture of Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
I didn't think like, oh, who took this picture? I didn't care. So I never thought of it like that. And then, and you know, I didn't study photography in college.
What did you
So,
study?
anthropology.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. So like, I took like maybe 2 or 3 photo classes, just really super basic, pass fail, you know, and just kind of learned on the fly. And I actually learned because I worked for the school paper as a photographer,
Okay.
which turned out to be a really great training because, you know, like I went to UConn, so we had big time sports.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one day I'd be shooting, you know, like a Big East basketball game, and the next day, like a pumpkin carving contest in, you know, bumfuck Connecticut. And then the next day, something for the music section, you know, so I had to sort of learn on the fly, you know, like even now, instead of lighting something, I'll just push the film as much as I can. You know?
Oh, yeah. What year was this at UConn? What year are we talking?
I was there 90 to 94.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what even inspired you to start working at the school paper?
I think, I don't really remember, but I know I'd taken a photo class and I loved it.
Cool.
You know, I just didn't like critiques, and I didn't like having to explain why I made this decision, because I didn't know, you know, so I didn't have, like, I was taking pictures of my friends drunk, passed out, you know, and up at UConn there's like
go ahead.
trees and squirrels and ducks, you know, there was nothing to take pictures of.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I guess I just thought it would be fun, you know. And I actually made some money, so it was great. They paid me based on what printed.
How much did you make?
Enough to buy a Canon EOS Elan.
Was that your first camera or your second camera?
No, my first camera was the Pentax K1000.
Okay, classic.
Yeah. Which I actually used for quite a long time. A few of my very well-known photos are done with the Pentax K1000. And
Really?
just turn the thing until the light meter was in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
Like that was just how, and then if it was backlit, you know, it was like a little bit up, but that was just how my mind has always worked. There was never like a technical aspect to it. It was really just like a feel of it, and making sure that, and the thing with the paper that really helped me was, you know, I learned to get something that could be printed first. Yeah. You know, like if I was shooting a basketball game, if someone was shooting free throws, I would take pictures of someone shooting free throws because that's easy.
Right.
And then I knew that worst case scenario, at least I have that. And then I would try to get like the amazing action shot of someone dunking or, you know, dribbling or whatever. But because, you know, like the big time photographers had like strobes in the rafters and stuff. And I just had this little tiny, you know, Pentax K1000 with a Tamron lens, you know, it's like a 70-300 5.6 f-stop, you know, it's not for shooting live sports indoors.
But here's what I think is so funny. For whoever's watching, Mike and I are both featured in Contact High, which is an incredible book curated by Vicky
Who I
Tomac.
saw on here.
Yes, and an incredible exhibition, and just an all-around incredible, you know, project to be a part of. And I think a lot of the photos that both of us shot were because maybe we weren't the #1 photographer at the time. Maybe we got to shoot the up-and-coming hip-hop artists. The bigger photographers were shooting someone much bigger, but we got the up-and-comers. And when I photographed Nicki Minaj, she'd never been photographed for a magazine feature before. And then time went on, and she's now the big thing. So...
Who was that for? Who was that for? Okay.
Magazine.
Was it for like the next section or something?
Yeah, it was like a
just the one page.
It was a third of the page. Yeah. But I guess my point is, like, you're talking about all the big photographers that had the lights in the rafters, and you're just dealing with whatever bullshit you can scrape together. But as time goes on, those photographs that you took with the bullshit lighting are probably better than the ones that were taken by the pros in terms of, like, you know, lasting forever, you know?
Well, I remember there was this one time I must have hit my shutter at the exact moment as the guy that was shooting for the Hartford Courant. And like, it was this one picture on the contact sheet that was just like perfectly lit. You know, I was just like, damn, that's amazing. You know? But yeah, no, going back to what you were saying, like when I was shooting for XXL, like I never shot the cover. Like I wouldn't even know how to shoot the cover. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the covers that they usually ran, like I shot covers for Herb and stuff like that, but you know, it's very specific. And I think it's almost a blessing in a way to get to shoot people like C Murder and Pimp C and State Property, because, you know, David Banner, before he really even had a record deal. And the reason being is that, like, you know, as you know, if you're shooting Jay-Z, there's a lot that comes with that. You know, there's a lot of people that it has to go through, and a lot of people have to approve of this and that and that. And that was definitely never my my vibe. Like, obviously, if they had asked me to shoot the cover, I would have been happy to. Like, I wouldn't have been like, no, but no, I want to shoot See Murder. And, you know, I wouldn't have been like that. But like in hindsight, you know, like we all basically did what we were supposed to do. You know, what worked with our personalities and our style, and you know, and I think the thing about film that I've said this to people, especially like younger photographers. The amazing thing about it was, if you looked at XXL or Trace or Vibe or whatever, and there were some amazing photographers working for these magazines, and each person had different equipment, they preferred different types of film, different lenses. You know, now it's literally the same. Yeah. And no disrespect to anybody, like I'm not one of those like back in my day, you know, like nothing like that. But we don't really see the iconic images like a Danny Clinch or a Mannion, or, you know, like the iconic image of this artist, you know, like a new artist, because they're mostly doing their own content, you know, and it's just usable. It's not for posterity. It's for the immediate post and likes and whatever, which is totally fine, because that's where we're at now. But I think there's a loss in there, in the same way that with music itself, since it's so easy to do, I think you lose something, you know, because like, you know, someone like Quincy Jones, who had even like engineers that had played such a big part in making iconic records, they're not around, you know, because nobody cares.
Well, those people are really expensive, and I think the budgets these days you can't necessarily hire someone
Right.
to take your photo on 4x5 film, which I did many times back in the day, so to
Right.
speak. I
Yeah.
would go out. You wanted to challenge yourself in the before digital, so how would you challenge
Yeah.
yourself? Like, okay, I'm going to lug a 4x5 camera to shoot,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Or
Yeah. I never
well,
had I never had the patience for that.
yeah.
I was just
Well,
like,
what was your first job? What was your very first job? You shot for the yearbook for UConn, which is very esteemed
no, not the
position.
yearbook, the
Oh,
newspaper.
the newspaper, okay.
Yeah.
And then what was your very first kind of job photographing musicians or hip hop artists? How'd you
Well,
transition from that? How did you transition from UConn to photographer to hip hop photographer?
well, when I graduated from UConn, I had no idea. Like, I wasn't even thinking about. Like, I didn't know. I really didn't know that photographer was a job. Like,
Right.
that a career. I just didn't think in those terms. And so after I graduated, I got an internship at Us Magazine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, after I graduated. You know? So, and I was the worst intern ever because it was like, you know, and then I did that for a couple months. And then after I left, I got a job. Remember Andy's Cheapies, the clothing
Yeah.
store in Broadway? I worked at Andy's Cheapies, making like $200 a week, working 6 days a week. And
It's like
I got,
clothing store in
yeah,
downtown New York. Yeah.
yeah, it was you know, like vintage clothing.
Right.
So, and it wasn't cheap. So, so I got a call from the woman, Kirsten Dimitrick, that I interned for,
Yeah.
saying that there was this photo agency that was looking for someone. I should send them my resume, whatever. So I did, and they hired me. And it was, you know, it was London Features. They,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, they syndicated celebrity photos.
Yeah.
So I got a job there as a photo researcher or whatever. And, you know, the photographers would come in with pictures from concerts. And I'd be like, wait a second, you get paid to like to go to, and then I'm like, I like going to concerts and I know how to take pictures. So I was like, let me figure out how to do this. And since I worked there, I knew how the photo passes were gotten. Because
Oh,
we would request photo passes for our photographers.
that's really key. Because if without the photo pass back then, there was almost no way you could lug
No
your
way.
very large
No way.
camera into
Yeah.
the venue with the bright
Yeah.
flash.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
So so I would start getting photo passes for myself. Like, and there was this German magazine that we serviced called Pop Rocky. And
Okay.
I called the photo editor and asked if I could use their name to, you know, get photo passes. And she was like, I don't care. You know, do whatever you want. Because it was like a German tiger beat, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing with the international was nobody really checked. Nobody cared. You know, like if I said I was shooting for Rolling Stone, somebody would have
Right.
asked, you know, who is this person?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was able to get into shows and basically learned on the fly, and by talking to, you know, veteran photographers that were there, like, you know, you know, like you know, how to push film, like what to shoot it at, what to set my camera at, because, you know, like with the big shows, you couldn't use flash. Like in
Right.
clubs, you could use flash, but if you were shooting Rage Against the Machine at Roseland, you can't use flash.
Right.
And I was getting myself into big shows. Like I shot like Lenny Kravitz in '96, you know.
Wow.
But and then I had a few, you know, good pictures, and and London Features wouldn't rep me because they said it was a conflict. So I went to Retina, who was the competition.
Right.
And Julie from Retina was kind enough to sign me. So I started shooting under a different name so I wouldn't get in trouble.
Really?
Yeah.
What name?
Sam Mack. so so then so then so then some of the photographers started complaining because they would see me in the pit and they thought that I was going to sell my pictures and not theirs, which I wasn't doing.
Oh, they knew that you worked at London Features.
Yeah, because they would come in.
Wow. Okay.
So
Drama.
yeah, so the boss was basically like, you have to make a decision, and I was like, fuck off, like I'm not gonna not be a photographer because I was making like $18,000 a year at this job full time.
Yeah.
So they fired me. So then I had my unemployment for 6 months. And in that time, and I remember I went for two interviews at different photo agencies. And I remember being in the middle of the second interview thinking like, I don't even want this fucking job. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, let me just figure out how to make money as a photographer. And anyway, to answer your question.
Yeah.
So then there was this woman, Marla Kittler, who worked at this magazine called Swing. And she knew me from London Features. And she knew that I was trying to be a photographer. So she hired me to shoot this band called Shelter. You ever hear of them?
Yeah, the hardcore band.
Yeah, they were like hardcore and Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So that was the first job I ever had, first thing I ever got published. And and hip hop just came about because I liked going to the shows. And, with hip hop, especially then, mostly at like Tramps and Wetlands and stuff like that, it was much easier to get access. And I was able to, like if I went to like, say, Big Daddy Kane was performing and Slick Rick was there, and I was backstage and I got a picture of them, I could call the source, Riggs at the source, and be like, I got a picture of Big Daddy Kane and Slick Rick. Do you want to see the pictures for the Coast to Coast section, the parties?
Right.
And they paid $85 a picture, and Vibe paid $60 for the in the mix section. So if I sold like 4 or 5 pictures a month, at least I could pay my rent or whatever. And then once I started getting things published, publicists started to hire me.
Huh.
Because they saw that I could get pictures in the magazines. So now instead of doing it for free and then hoping to sell something, I would get like $150, and then I could sell things on top of that, and then I could bring it to Retina, and they could, so that's how I just started.
Did you ever send out any promos? Did you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is really cool, I want to get more of this work? Or did you just kind of connect the dots?
No, like, this is the thing. Like, I didn't know what this was. Like, I'm the living, breathing example of ignorance is bliss. Like, I really didn't know how you're supposed to do it. Like I had a roommate who went to RIT, and he was an assistant, and he assisted for like everybody, like all of the giant names at the time in music photography, especially. And his friends were all from RIT, which is a big photo school.
Rochester.
And they were all assisting, and I was making a living as a photographer because I didn't have this thing in my mind that I need to be doing portraits. I was just like, you're going to pay me to go to a concert? Like, okay. Like I was happy to get $150 and have my picture be this small in the back of the source,
Right.
Because I got called for, I was shooting for XXL features for like 2 years before I had a portfolio. You know, I didn't know about promos or because I never assisted.
Right.
So I never had like a mentor or somebody to sort of show me the ropes or anything like that, you know?
I didn't assist either. I assisted a couple people. I actually assisted Jamil GS, who is also
Oh,
in
okay.
Contact High,
Nice.
and some heavy metal photographers from the 80s I assisted. But
But
I
that was
didn't,
just for fun.
yeah, I didn't assist so much. I think for women, it was assisting jobs weren't really available for women because it's
You could
understood that we
carry
can't
on.
carry the kind of equipment, and
Yeah.
shooting film, you have a lot of equipment and
Yeah.
gear. So women would go into being studio managers, I think, more than assistants. But
Yeah.
I only realized that in hindsight. But
Yeah.
I
No,
also
I didn't
started,
know. I didn't know anything. You know, I didn't. I mean, I was shooting like ads for Nietzsche, and I didn't have an assistant. You know, like I didn't know what I was doing. I just showed up with a camera. You know,
what was your first portrait assignment? Because you shot live photos for years before you did portraits, right?
like well, that's a tricky question because assignment is, you know, the first person and this is crazy, but the first person I ever was hired to shoot, actually, I don't know which came first because they were both in 1998, but,
Okay.
but I really wanted to do portraits. So like I wanted to branch out, you know, I didn't want to be 40 going to concerts and, you know,
Right.
photo classes, you know, no disrespect to anybody that does it. It just wasn't
Right.
for me. You know, it's like hard. You have to stand a lot, and I've never been a night person anyway. So, so Janine Outlaw was the photo editor at the Source, and
Mm-hmm.
and she kind of knew who I was just because I was always in the office because I was always bringing pictures to the back to rigs, and and the what's it called, unsigned hype page, which, you know, people would send in their demos, and if they got mentioned, you know, if they got the unsigned hype, they could get put, like Biggie was an unsigned hype, Foxy Brown. It's like, it was like a big deal,
Right.
like super big deal. But people were sending in their own photos, you know. So I saw it. I was like, hey, maybe you could let me shoot the unsigned hype, you know, because I knew I wasn't going to do a feature because I didn't know what I was doing, you know.
Right.
so she was like, sure, you know. And I wasn't even expecting to get paid. You know, I just wanted to expand what I do.
Where was your
So
money? Where was your money coming from if you weren't expecting to get paid? I think we have to kind of
no,
talk about
from
that too, because back then there was more money around than there is now. You can't really do jobs for free now. Everything's so much
no,
more
no,
expensive than it was back then.
no. I was getting paid for the unsigned hypes. I was getting paid to shoot shows. I was shooting for Spin, all of their live stuff back then.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I was making a living as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they paid me for the unsigned hype. I just wasn't expecting to get paid.
Right, right.
So anyway, so she said, yeah, when they're in New York, you know, I'll tell Riggs that you're the guy and blah blah blah. So I was like, all right, cool. So the third one I ever did was Eminem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the same year, I think I'd been sending, like I would send slides, I would send dupes to magazines, you know, like I was sending stuff to Rat Pages in LA, and I don't think they ever published because they didn't have one of those pages.
Right.
But but in '98, the photo editor, this guy Lumumba,
Mm-hmm.
he called me out of the blue. I'd never spoken to before, asking if I would be interested in shooting DMX for a feature.
Oh my gosh.
And this was when DMX was like where my dog's at was like blown up. And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that.
Like, let me clear my schedule.
So that was like the first like official portrait session, whatever you want to call it, that I was hired to do.
So were you nervous before you did that?
For DMX?
Yeah.
this is another thing about the ignorance part of my personality. Like, I don't remember being nervous. I remember being not nervous, but anxious to get it done.
Right, right. I get that totally.
And like, I mean, it was crazy because, you know, he was there and it was in the old Def Jam building that was way downtown
Right.
in Tribeca. And he was there with like everyone from Yonkers. It was like 9,000 people from Yonkers there. And you know me, like I'm not a big person, you know? Like I'm not like an intimidating presence.
No.
So
Well, he's not tall either.
no, he's not, but everybody around him was gigantic. So, and he was muscular, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So so it's funny because beforehand the publicist told me you've got 15 minutes with him. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, cool. I'm gonna, you know, I had my K1000 loaded. I had my Rolleiflex that I got from the flea market, you know, and this little like light meter that I was just learning how to use.
Oh my gosh.
And no assistant and no lights, obviously.
Yeah.
And so nobody gives a fuck about me. They're just like ignoring me. But in my mind, I'm thinking like 15 minutes. That's all
Yeah.
I have. And this is where the training from the school paper came in handy.
Oh no.
Because it was like, I need to get something. So I decide I'm going to make an announcement, you know? So I go, excuse me, I need everybody except for DMX to go to this side of the alley, right?
Okay.
And it was like in a movie where, you know, like the guy comes into the saloon and everybody like turns and the music stops, and it was like that. And I was just like, uh-oh. But then thankfully, you know, X was like, no, it's cool, everybody, you know, blah, blah, blah. And afterwards, the publicist, and the funny thing is I ended up spending like the whole night just hanging out with him. Like I went to the studio with him and, you know, while he was recording.
That's awesome.
And, but afterwards, the publicist was like, I've never heard anyone talk to them like that. I was like, you told me I had 15 minutes. You know, like this is my first assignment. You know, I'm not going to call the photo editor and be like, I couldn't get it because I was afraid because everybody was just standing around. And nobody was they were just standing around.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like I was interrupting anything.
Right.
You know? But, you know, you kind of have to, it's hip hop, you know, you got to be aggressive.
Yeah. Have you ever had anybody make you wait for a really long time or not show up? Or you don't have to name any artist names, but have you ever had any kind of horror stories about that kind of scenario?
Well, I'll flip it.
Yeah.
I've had 2 instances where people were on time. One where someone was early.
Yeah.
Kalman showed up early. I was like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like,
Yeah.
he was like 5 minutes early. I was like, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
But
totally unexpected too.
oh my God. No, everybody always. That was part of the gig, was just waiting for people, you know, and then, you know, hoping that people are cool.
So how did you prepare for the DMX shoot? Talking a little bit about film photography. So how would you, you know, nowadays people just have their SD cards or their CF cards and their camera. You might bring, I don't even know if people bring more than one camera anymore, but when you shot film, you would certainly bring more than one camera. Because what
bag of cameras, one bag of cameras, one bag of film.
Yeah. So how would, let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
You've documented Woodstock and Woodstock 99 for Spin, and yeah, my boyfriend was listening to that podcast. He's like, oh, your friend Mike is on that podcast, and then we ordered your zine. You have a zine. I actually have it with me right here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You have a zine all about your Woodstock 99 photos.
Yeah.
And that's, to me as a photographer and as someone who is shooting film before digital, that scenario sounds to me to be crazy because I want to know how much film you brought with you.
A lot.
Yeah. And like, so were you sequestered at Woodstock the whole 4 days, or did you get to come back to New York and pick up more film and like,
talk
about how you prepared for that shoot with batteries and film and gear and all that?
Well, know I didn't have much in my bank account. So I think I might have had to have them buy the film.
Okay.
The funny thing about that is I'd been shooting live stuff for them for like 2 years.
Right.
Like every live show in New York, I shot it for Spin. And I'd heard about this Woodstock and blah, blah, blah. And they hadn't called me. So I was kind of like, what the fuck, you know? So I called them and I was like, hey, are you planning to cover Woodstock? And they were like, I don't think we're going to cover it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Right.
you have to cover it. So they covered it and then they sent me, but I just remember, and I had an assistant for that just to help carry stuff because, you know, it's a lot. It was exhausting. And I just remember just bringing as much film as possible. And I think,
how much? How many rolls? Guess.
I don't remember, 50, 60.
Okay.
And, you know, probably 2 Canon, EOS bodies and my Pentax K1000. And that was, and a couple lenses. I've always used the same lenses. Like I had, I would always rent the 70 to 200 for live stuff. Mm-hmm. Like a 2 or 2.8 f-stop.
Yeah.
And shoot everything wide open.
Right.
And, and then I had a flash for like backstage and stuff like that. But that was tricky because some of the shows were during the day, some were at night, you know, and then, you know, the crowd was like insane and it was exhausting and it was dirty, you know, just everything covered in mud. You know, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was wild.
So how many rolls of film would you bring with you when you went out to shoot a particular band, and how was it changing film in that environment? Like, I wanted to ask a few pretty nerdy questions. So
yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I shot a show, but I'm sure I probably would bring like, because I remember I would go to when B&H used to be on 17th Street. Mm-hmm. I would go to B&H and get like, and I would literally get the, you know, it wasn't like later on when we would just have tons of film in our fridges. Right. I would get whatever I thought I needed for that show, whether it was like 5 rolls.
Right.
And then a pack of batteries, you know, just, and I was always, that was the thing, like I was always prepared. And there was this one guy that always shot at Tramps also, who inevitably would ask if I had an extra roll of film or extra.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, come on, you know, like the fuck. But it was a couple, probably like 5 or 6 rolls of film, depending on the show. Like if it was just one band.
Yeah.
And then also like if it was like a bigger band, you can only shoot the first 3 songs. Yep. So, you know, you didn't need like crazy amounts. But yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah. So after that, when did your kind of career, and this is still before digital, when did it get into full swing, and how many jobs would you be doing, like a week or a month, and how would that work with taking film to the lab and all that kind of stuff, and you know?
Well, I think in like 2000 or 2001, I started shooting for XXL. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started doing features and portraits, and you know, then I mean, even to this day, I haven't really done a lot of record label stuff. But because I never had that glossy sort of, I don't know, I think it was always more of a wild card than the automatic, you know? Right. But yeah, I was shooting for XXL and Slam. And then since I was shooting for Slam, I got a call from this ad agency. They were doing a Mountain Dew Code Red campaign.
Oh, wow.
They'd seen some stuff I did in Slam. and they were like, can you bring your book? And I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't have a book, you know? So
You didn't have a portfolio.
I didn't have a portfolio. And, you know, back then, like, I didn't have a printer that could print good
No.
pictures,
They
you know?
didn't exist. Digital printers didn't exist back then.
Yeah,
You had to have the lab do the print, or you would print it yourself.
right. But luckily, again, I had this roommate who, he was photo guy 101, and he helped me, you know, put it together, whatever. And I got the gig somehow. You know?
Wow.
So that was like my first, where I was like, oh shit, you can like really make some money doing this, you know?
Right, right.
And then also I started shooting ads for And One at around the same time. No, And One was a little later. And One was probably around like, I don't know, I get the dates mixed up, but
Yeah, maybe talk about the difference between an income from doing a magazine shoot to doing an advertising shoot for Mountain Dew.
well, I guess the difference is that when you're shooting for a magazine, not the cover, and someone gives you their opinion, you can tell them to fuck off.
Yep.
When you're shooting an ad and someone gives you their opinion, you're like, yeah, sure, we can do that. Anything you want. Because I remember the creative director had an idea for a shot, and I was like, yeah, let's try it, you know, for the Mountain Dew. And my assistant, who was a friend of mine, was like, don't you hate it when they do that? I'm like, you have no idea how much I'm getting paid for this. Like, I'll do anything he wants right now, you know? So, yeah, no, it was different. It was like the difference between, like, I don't even know, like, I don't know how to quantify it. It was just different, you know? And then on top of that, it was like you got X amount of money and then X amount of budget and miscellaneous budget, and you know, like, I'm like, what?
Yeah,
and I had no idea how to do any of that, you know.
they would pay you your rate, and then they would pay you, and then they would say, before 2008 recession, they would say, oh, and whatever equipment rental you need in film processing, just bill us. And they wouldn't even give you a cap.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
just say, just bill us for all the equipment rental and bill us
yeah,
for all
yeah.
the film processing. I don't remember clients caring how much that was, unless it was like a smaller magazine.
Yeah.
So you had your rate, plus you got all your expenses paid for.
Yeah,
So,
and then the rate was just to shoot, and then you got usage fees,
oh yeah,
and then you
For
got, you
paper
know,
books.
it's like a magazine usage fee, a point of purchase usage fee, you know, whatever. I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Like, I had no idea. I literally had no idea. But thankfully for that Mountain Dew campaign, one of the people in the I forget all the different titles, like print producer, like all that stuff.
Right.
But because she was like put together a proposal or a bid, and I was like I would have done it for like $1,500. Like, I had no idea, you know.
Right.
And I was like, can you give me a ballpark? And she was like, well, I can send you another photographer's, but just come in a little under it.
Wow, that's really nice she did that.
I know. I was like, all right. And then she sent it to me. I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, because I didn't have an agent or, you know, nothing like that.
Right.
Like, nothing.
You're a few years ahead of me, so I started shooting professionally in 97. I started shooting photos in 90, but professionally in 97. I photographed Def Squad for Thrasher magazine. Nice. So also at Def Jam. So I too have been there.
Yeah.
On the roof, you know.
That's times 3.
Yeah, yeah. I photographed Jay-Z there in 98 too, in Def Jam, in the elevator, in the you know, the working elevator, because it was a lot more interesting than the elevator for the public. That was very
right.
But
what was that for?
What?
What was Jay-Z for?
Oh, that was for the Fridge skateboarding magazine.
Oh yeah, Craig. I shot for Fridge. Yeah.
Craig Witherby. Yeah. He's great. He's great. So getting a little nostalgic, but Yeah, I actually totally forget what I was going to ask. I kind of got off topic, but I will ask this. So, do you have any horror stories about like film processing, printing, anything like, did you ever have a lab screw up your film? Did you ever lose any negatives, anything like that? Because, people now with digital, of course, you can lose your CF card or your SD
Right.
card, but
Mhm.
losing a negative was like kind of losing a part of your soul.
First of all, can we talk about this light that I have here?
Sure.
It's just
Since,
the window. It's just natural light.
seeing as you're a photographer, yeah.
Um, Horror story. I mean, I had a few assistants open film backs in the middle because I would often shoot half of a roll
Yeah.
in I would shoot half of a roll black and white, then get the color back and shoot. And I would just because I was sort of like frantic while I was
Right.
shooting, whereas like I would literally just have a bag of cameras and just like, oh, let me get this one, let me get that thing,
Yeah.
and I didn't know the names for stuff, so I would just let me get that thing, this thing. And and but experienced assistants who are used to professional photographers were used to if you gave them the film back, it was shot, you know.
Right.
But I wasn't like that. I would just because I didn't see the point in taking like 15 of the same picture,
Right.
So there are a few times where film backs got opened mid-roll. As far as labs really messing up, I can't really. I mean, I remember one time a roll of Jamiroquai was lost, but at the time it was a big deal. Now it's not so big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of any like super horrific things like that.
So the Mountain Dew job, which we were just talking about budgets and how much money was available, I remembered what I was going to say is I remember hearing about I'd say a fairly well-known photographer, but not a superstar photographer back in the early 90s, got $50,000 to photograph publicity photos for Pearl Jam.
Wow.
Nowadays, the band usually just has their friend do the pictures or it might kick you 150 bucks.
And the pictures look great, so what are you gonna do? Portrait
Yeah,
mode?
I mean, sometimes they don't look great, but what do you feel like,
Nobody cares.
yeah, do you feel like there was something lost there when, we were all out shooting film and all of the care and time it went into shooting film. And nowadays, they don't have the budgets to pay photographers, again, somebody might have their friend take the pictures. Do you think there's been anything lost or do you see it as like an evolution?
Um, I mean, there's definitely been something lost, like just in terms of for the historical canon, like, I mean, like you could take a negative that was shot during the Civil War and you could print it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
huge, any
that's
size.
crazy. Like there were guys on battlefields in the Civil War with like cameras the size of a fucking Volkswagen taking glass negatives with cannonballs flying around, and then they would develop it on the fucking battlefield.
Yeah, yeah,
Like what the fuck,
yeah.
So
That, it
yeah,
takes a lot of passion to do that. You've got to really give a shit about photography to do
or you
that,
have to be crazy, you
Yeah,
know.
or both.
Yeah. So but yeah, no, there's definitely something lost. I mean, it's like, I mean, photographers haven't really ever gotten like a ton of respect in terms of the importance of our place in everything. Um, but like when you think of certain artists, a photo comes to mind, and I
Hmm.
don't think it's like that now. Like
Right,
I can't think of a iconic Kendrick Lamar photo, you know,
right,
or an iconic Drake photo, where it's like, oh wow, that's amazing. But
right.
there's tons of iconic Biggie photos,
Yeah.
Jay-Z, like everybody, you know. So I don't know, but in the same token, that's what it is. That's what it is now, and it's never going to go back. So, you know.
Yeah. And apparently I haven't shot any hip hop artists or any musicians in a minute because I've moved on to doing documentary films and such.
Oh,
But
excuse me.
yeah, apparently, artists, really big artists these days, when you photograph them, they make you sign contracts so that the artist owns all your images.
Wow.
So it's not like back when we were shooting, we owned all of our images unless
Yeah.
for some odd reason the client did a buyout, which was so rare.
Well, the labels
So,
would do buyouts for big artists, but
right.
I never did them. So
Me neither. No.
yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I would not sign that, and
Oh,
I would pass on the job for sure,
yeah.
because it's like, I don't know, it's like, fuck off, just not enough people tell other people to fuck off, because it's like, it's so disrespectful to
Yeah.
say like what you're creating, I own,
Right.
like, no, you hire me to do a job. I'll do the job. I'll service the photos to you, but I own it. I'm the copyright owner.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, I think,
If I was a photographer doing that shit, if I was like, because in the end of the day, you're gonna lose. You know,
right.
you're gonna lose.
It's crazy because I'll talk to younger photographers and I think when you start, or if you're just young in age, you don't realize that your images have the potential to live on essentially forever. So
Totally.
you're not thinking towards the future about like, hey, I have this image of Jay-Z in 1998. Maybe in 2020, it's going to be this have
Right.
cultural significance, be this thing that's even bigger than myself.
Right.
So I feel for photographers that are put in the position because we all need to make money, right? So I
Yeah.
feel for photographers put in the position to give all their photos away to
Right.
the artist because decades from now, what's going to happen to those images?
Right.
It's just an artist
They're gonna
trying
be
to
on
take
somebody's
control of
phone.
their image, you know?
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because back in the day, like when I started, with the concerts and stuff like that, somehow I intuitively knew to protect my archive.
Right.
So like if I took a picture of Fat Joe, even if Atlantic hired me to shoot stills of like a video or whatever, I knew because I shot slides,
Yeah, that's
all that
crazy.
stuff with slides. So for people that don't know what slides are, that's the negative and the positive. So there was only one thing. It wasn't the negative and then you print from it. It was
Right.
just a slide. So
And they're a lot harder to shoot because you can't get your exposure wrong at
yeah.
all.
So I never gave anyone my originals.
Hmm.
I would always bring the shoot in and let them pick what they wanted. Then I would go make dupes and give them the dupes. Because I somehow knew that this person that's a publicist here, in 10 years, they're probably not going to be a publicist here.
Oh, yeah.
And my pictures of Fat Joe, nobody's at Atlantic is going to give a shit about them, but I'm going to give a shit about them because I made it. It's part of my life. You know what I mean? Like our pictures it's part of our story, you
Oh,
know?
it's hard for me to even go through my archives because I get in this crazy K-hole of nostalgia and I cannot get myself out of it. And then I remember a slide that I thought I had here and it's not there, and I
Oh,
want to go
God.
try to all of that. I mean,
Tell
I
me
have my
about it.
archives in a 10 by 5 foot storage unit 2 hours from here, and if I get into that storage unit, it's like goodbye, Angela. I can't
Right.
get out of that
Yeah.
headspace because it's every minute of your life,
We're
you
going to see
know?
those on Storage Wars someday.
Oh God, I
She
hope
didn't
not.
pay her bill, and now we've got this archive.
So you never gave away slides or negative, not gave away, but you never let a client borrow your negs or slides ever?
Maybe I let them borrow it, but then I'd be like on them to get it back.
That's good because I swear to you, every single time that I loaned clients negatives, they did not return. And I
Well,
lost
because you
some
have to
interesting
realize, like,
stuff.
they don't care as much as you do.
No, I had to
You
learn
know?
that the hard way though. It
Yeah.
sounds like you understood that intuitively.
Well, I think it was also because I knew from working at the photo agency that
Oh yeah,
there was value in it, you know?
right.
And you can't just like, Atlantic's paying me $150 to shoot this whatever, record release party or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I knew from seeing old pictures and you know, the archive that the agency had, that people were always asking for random shit, you know, and I knew there was value in it. And more importantly, it's my shit, you know, I did it. So, and nobody complained, you know, because they really didn't care. You know, like they were happy to have what they needed for that month's magazine cycle.
Yeah.
And after that, it was like, you know, whatever, you know, but for me, it was like, this is like, I want all of this, you know?
I remember I had a client, not at a magazine, but at a brand, try to guilt me into giving me all I shot medium format chrome for catalogs for various brands. And
I know what you're talking about.
What?
I know which brand you're talking about.
Okay. Do you? Well, we don't need to mention it. So they kept bothering me and saying, we need your originals. We need your originals. And I wouldn't send them. This is after they'd already gotten what they needed for their catalog. And I remember them just kind of sending some kind of passive aggressive message, well, this photographer would always send us their negatives, and this photographer, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to, because I'd already had clients lose negatives more than once, probably 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when websites all of a sudden became a thing, right? Remember when websites came out?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden there were websites.
Like 2000.
And they had all of this money because they were getting so much money from investors. And they didn't know where the money was coming from. They hired staff and they hired photographers like you and me that would go out and photograph campaigns for their website, right? And they would pay you like a good rate to do this. And at some point they realized, well, the money is finite. It's not coming in anymore. And 2 of them went bankrupt. 2 websites I was shooting for went bankrupt, and they had all my negatives and they got seized in the bankruptcy. And we're talking about photos of super famous artists that were seized in bankruptcy. I don't know if that happened to you.
No.
Okay, well, lucky you. Do you remember when that transition came about? Do you remember when all of a sudden there's a World Wide Web, and there was a modem, and there was email? Do you remember that transition and how that?
Yeah, it was around like 99, 2000.
How long did it take you to get onto email and to start doing your work that way?
A long time.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was shooting film. Well, I still shoot almost all film. If you give me a decent budget, it's going to be film, hands down.
Right.
But I was shooting all film until about 2008. And I remember the first digital shoot I did was with DJ AM, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it was like one of the early cameras. It wasn't full frame. I was very not happy about using it.
Like
How
6
did you?
megapixels.
Yeah. I knew that it was going to the technology was going to get better and better. And I was so bummed that I would have these photos of him on a subpar technology. But how was your transition? When did you start shooting digital, and how did you feel about it?
I never started shooting digital.
Really? You've never shot an assignment digital?
No, I have, obviously. But I've never owned a digital camera other than my phone and like a point and shoot.
Wow.
Yeah, no, honestly, like for me, I always hated it. And, you know, we're both Tauruses, so we're both slow to change with technology or the world around us or whatever. So, yeah, no, I just never wanted to do it. And yeah, no, I shot ads and I shot some album covers digitally and all that. But I never wanted to. And part of the reason why was because technology it's this thing that, like, you know, I have floppy disks with photos on them.
Yeah.
You know? And the thing is, it's like with digital photos, they don't really exist. You know, they don't exist. I mean, you can print it and then it exists. But the idea of like a hard drive can crash and everything that you've done in the past 5 years can be gone. Like, who the fuck would sign up for that?
Yeah.
Just to make clients happy? Like figure out another way to make money and fuck clients, you know?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, I don't know. It's also like, okay, so at first it was